you, Dany, for
Hey, how you
speaking with
doing?
me. I'm doing great. How are you, Ben?
I've been doing good. It's a hectic day, but I'm loving it. I love this stuff.
Um, so Monster Factory, this is an amazing docu-series that I think is completely different from what we've seen before. This is literally independent wrestling. You're like Joe Schmo, I want to be a wrestler, and we meet you. Can you tell me about when this opportunity first presented itself to you, and what do you hope to accomplish with this new audience?
It was a long process. This began before there was even an Apple TV Plus. This began back in 2016. Public Record came and recorded a mini documentary, like 16 minutes, and it became editor's pick on Vimeo. And the team there was like, all right, let's start shopping it around and doing all this stuff. And then about 2018 or 19, uh, I think it was Galen Summers and Jeremiah Zagar got on board, and that's when like people started to talk about it, and we were still pitching it for places, and then the pandemic hit. And during the pandemic, Apple showed interest, so they were actually flying crews out, and we were filming kind of like a proof of concept during the whole pandemic, and we got it greenlit right towards the end of the pandemic, and it was July 31st. I got the call of congratulations, you have a show. July 31st of I think it was 2021. So it wasn't until December of that year that we had the contract all sorted out and we were starting to get ready to film. And it's the same crew that did the mini documentary with a bunch more people on board. And the crew's amazing because like you can see the vision from the first mini documentary to this. It's pretty much the same message, the same core values were always there. So that's why I really like this. And that's what I'm hoping to accomplish is people see other sides of pro wrestling other than the stuff they see on the screen or the really bad stuff. This is the stuff like people can apply to their regular life stuff here, the life lessons that go on in the show.
Right. And what exactly with this show do you talk about the life lessons? What would you say has been the most valuable for you? You are the coach, you are in it. But what has it taught you throughout the years? Because you've been doing this a while.
Yeah, I've been doing this for over a decade now, and this project here was really good, not only for the students, but for me, because it became therapy for me. And plus, I always have an open door policy with everybody should come to me and communicate. And plus, we discuss things in public setting, like we'll have the entire class, like 30, 40 people, just talk and vent some things and get the emotions out there and see what's going on. And I think this was good for me because I got to see stuff that I didn't even know was going on. I didn't know all that stuff about Gabby. I knew some of it, but I didn't know it as much as we saw it. I didn't know all the stuff about Twitch and all the stuff about Bobby and, Goldie and stuff. Like I knew some of it, but it was when you see like the input from their parents and their peers and stuff like that, it really puts you in that like, oh man, there's so much more to everybody's story than you even know. And you think you're going through stuff, but you're really not going through it alone. Everybody's going through something. Everybody's got that battle.
With that new insight, does that change how you coach?
I'm always changing how I coach. Like I always say, like my core is always there. Like I always want my vision of coaching pro wrestling was it's very difficult to make it in pro wrestling. So while they're here, they might as well learn some life lessons that they can actually apply their life other than, hey, here's how you do 50 push-up, here's how you do 100 squats, and here's how you hit the ropes. Um, so yeah, so now it's just, okay, we found this other tool that we can use to help these kids get better and become better people. And if it helps them also get signed, well, that's cool too. Yeah, that's my mentality on it. And other coaches don't like that. I remember I think it was back in like 2012 or 13, getting a text from a coach, who, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame and all that stuff. And he's texting me, telling me your only business is to teach these kids to wrestle, nothing else. Stop, worrying about this and that. That's your job. And I was like, well, then that's why I'm a successful coach and you're not, because I do things this way and they work for me. You do things your way and you're not getting results. So just how about you stay in your lane and don't worry about me? And that's my
Now,
mentality, everything.
we've had the evolution of the business for just ever changing. And so I was wondering from a coach standpoint, are there things now that you wish was in place when you was a potential wrestler? You was
Oh
trying to go out
yeah.
there for WWE.
Well, if you watch the show, you'll see me. I talk about it. I wish there was someone there not to tell me to do tell me to not do the dumb stuff. Not to worry about doing all this crazy stuff over the top ropes and all. But back then they also didn't realize how detrimental it was to you.
Mhm.
We didn't understand that because that style of wrestling in the 90s when I was in there was kind of new to us. In the 80s, we were just like it was elbows and body slams and stuff, and then it became flips and jumps and dives later on, and people didn't realize like, hey, this might really mess you up. And that's where like my mentality is now of like we shouldn't really be doing stuff like that. So that's what I would say my biggest thing was is I wish someone was telling me that back then. Plus, like when I was at the Monster Factory, it was just a ring and that was it. We didn't worry about promos, we didn't worry about strength and conditioning. It was you walked in at 6 o'clock, you wrestled till 7:30, 8 o'clock, and you were out. And that's it. And they didn't care if you showed up and they didn't check with you and stuff like that. So that's what I wish was back then. But that's why also I was kind of motivated to make the school the way I wanted it. I needed that kind of like to experience that not being so good for me to be like, now I want to make it better for other people. And that's the way I approach my training.
Now we've seen an all-around change with wrestling in terms of, as you said before, it's not just wrestling. There's promos, they're entertainers, not just
Yes.
physically, but also in the mic and in other realms. With that, and also with the training, how do you kind of make sure there's a balance between this is an art form of look what we can do physically, but also here's what we can do vocally with our mouths and selling that
Right.
match?
But here's the tough part that we have to deal with. So many other wrestling schools don't have the same approach as me. So many wrestling schools are just worried about what happens in the ring. And what happens is now other students and other people that have learned wrestling are now telling our students we're doing it wrong, that we shouldn't be worrying about production, that we shouldn't be worrying about promos, that we shouldn't be worrying about social media. All we should be worrying about is being in the ring. And it's just so backwards. And that's one of the difficult parts for me because I have 30, 40 students that come in. And if I would have told them prior that we were doing promos, only 15 would show up. If I didn't tell them we were doing promos and we were doing matches and we were doing critiques and this and that, everybody would show up, and that's the thing. And even if I said, hey, X, Y, or Z is coming from AEW or WWE, be ready and have a promo, people would not show up and find a way. But if I told them they were having matches, they would get here. And that's what's so backwards in wrestling is we have this mentality of like we worry about the stuff that's not even real. Like the stuff we do in the ring is not real. You know what I mean? Like like we're worried about stuff that's not real. We need to worry about and as I say that, like we worry about stuff that's not real, but what at the same time we also need to worry about stuff like character development, all that. And of course that's not real either, but that's like the aspect of like that we're being neglected just to go in the ring and fake fight.
Right.
We should be worrying about character development, storylines, emphasizing certain things, hiding what's bad, accentuating what's good, and getting out of our comfort zone. And so many don't do that. And I run into it every day with training where I'm like, do we do this today? Am I going to lose a student? Are they going to get in their head? Are they going to do that? So it's like, I go by feel. I never have like in my mind, we're doing this today because everything changes. I could have all these lessons written up for the week. And if certain people aren't there, I'm like, man, people are missing a lesson. Now I got to go back to it. So I like to pretty much just play everything by ear and see where we're going. And sometimes I just walk in and I say, what's everybody want to work on? And then we just do that, especially now because it's crazy with all the media and stuff.
Right. So in the docuseries, you talk about a time when you came to your father, you wanted to be a wrestler, you passed through the training and he essentially said, no, I didn't think you would make it. And that kind of shifted how you approach coaching in terms of you'll never tell a student no. But when is it, or is it ever a moment where you have to realize, or for that student to realize, that their dream just they're just not to say good enough, but they just don't have that. Their passion may not equal that talent.
Yeah, but here's the thing. As long as they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, then I'm never going to get down on them. Like I'll be realistic as possible, but at the same time, we had a student who wasn't the greatest student. He was good. He wasn't the talk of the indies. Wasn't this, he wasn't that. He was about 5'8", in his early 20s, wanted to do all these different things. And I got a phone call from WWE about referees. And I said, hey, you want to be a referee? And now he's been there for 2 years. But if a couple of years ago I told him, listen, you're not 6'3", and I know you want to be a wrestler, so this isn't going to work out for you. So why don't you just save your headache and leave? He's not living his life and not living his dream. You never know when an opportunity is going to open up for you. You know, Jack Black, I'm sure, was told you're never going to be the lead role in a movie. And then that Shallow Hal came along, you know, stuff like that, where we can break stereotypes. We can get out there and show the world that there's different things. It's never going to happen if all we do is crap on everybody that doesn't look like you or me or the next person. And that's my mentality, and that's my take on it. That's also why a lot of people don't like my approach to this, because they're like, no, it's supposed to be like this. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, that's not it. You're wrong.
With so many wrestling companies kind of in the mix. Before it used to just be WWE, but we have AEW, ROH, New Japan, so many different ones. Do you feel that that offers more of a diverse pool than you've seen previously, say even when you was a student?
Yes, there's so much out there that I just tell everybody, just do your brand. Stop trying to meet the needs of all these different things. Just do your brand, be the best product you can be, and one of these companies will figure out a way to use you. And I told them that about me. Like, I never went to WWE. I never wrestled for WWE, never wrestled for Ring of Honor, never wrestled for WCW, ECW, nobody. I'm the best coach in the world right now, and I have my own TV show. I found somebody who's going to pay me, because if you're that good, somebody eventually will. And guess what? Now I'll start to get phone calls from all these wrestling organizations. My resume wasn't good enough for 10 years with getting people into WWE, Impact, Ring of Honor, AEW. That wasn't good enough. I got a TV show. Now they're going to call me. So, like, that's where I'm like, wrestling's backwards. Like, my resume should have got the phone calls. You know, it took Apple TV Plus to give me that format to show how good we really are. And, you know, we'll see if the phone starts ringing. You know, it's a weird business. It's so weird because, like, we're so backwards. It would be like if you're watching like a movie and you're like, no, Chris Evans knows better than Francis Ford Coppola, because Francis Ford Coppola was never an actor or never did this or never did that, when Francis Ford Coppola is a freaking genius. But in like the people's minds, they think wrestling is real and these characters are real and what they're doing in the ring is real. When in actuality, the things I'm doing is real. I'm really coaching people. I'm really helping them achieve their dreams. I'm really networking with other people to get their career better. So wrestling is very backwards right now. We're so backwards.
Do you hope this show kind of changes misconceptions about maybe also with you as well, because they described you as hard-headed and stubborn, and I'm like, you come across as just someone who extremely cares.
Right. I am stubborn and headfast with certain things, but here's why. Because I've been wrong so many times, and now I've realized here's what I'm right about now, because I learned my lesson. I was wrong. And now you guys are wrong and saying things that are wrong. Well, now I have to call you out and help you the way somebody helped me. And also, I'm protecting our kids. Like, a lot of times I'm acting a certain way because I don't want the people that are going to be offended by what I'm saying in our gym. And then I don't have to have that confrontation in purpose or in person. You know, so like when I'm very vocal about, like, yeah, I don't like racism. Yeah, I don't like transphobia. Yeah, I don't like homophobia. Yeah, I don't like bigots. Yeah, I don't like anti-Semitism. And people take that as like, oh, you're speaking out and getting political. No, it's I'm being a human, a good human, and I have people to protect, and I don't want you around me. Like, sure, come on by and train if you don't feel that way, and you'll realize like you're not going to last here because you're outnumbered. You know, this is our business. This is our world. This is our little niche right here of the Monster Factory, and this is who I want to surround myself with. So it's either, you know, get on board or get out. You know, that's the way I take things, and people think that's not wise and everything, but it's my business, you know, and that's the way I'm going to run it. I want my kids that are coming to follow dreams with me not having to worry about the bull crap. And that's why a lot of people are like, oh, you're so outspoken and all that, and you should shut up. And that's not me. You worry about you. That's not me.
Now let's talk about your students for a moment. I loved how completely diverse their stories were, all different backgrounds. What was it about? I'm interested in the fact of the choosing process of which students to highlight. You say you have around 30 to 40. We focus on around 5, 6. So what was that process like?
Well, they knew Twitch because he was in the first one. He was in the first, I call it the origin story. It was like 2016 documentary. He was in that, so they knew him. They had also known Gabby and Mimi and everybody else because they have been coming around ever since 2016. So they would say, hey, update us. Who's an interesting student? Who's got some stories to tell? What's going on? And I would be like, this person, this person, this person. And along the way, you know, there was 10 or 12 super interesting people, and they've interviewed, you know, so much and filmed so much. I mean, they were following us for a long time. And there's way more than 6 episodes in it. If like we had 12 episodes, you would see like probably 8 or 9 people followed. We just didn't have, so we had to encapsulate it with who had the greatest story and who could achieve those story arcs in the time. We didn't dictate anything. Like we didn't make anything up. Like everything that happened. It was just how can we facilitate it and actually, you know, get out there. And plus at the same time, some people didn't want their stories out there. You know, some didn't want to be interviewed. They just wanted to be in the background. And that's just the way it is. And many people got interviewed, and it was a process of who's interviewing, who's engaging, you know, who's going to leave it all out there and not be fake and not, you know, have to be coaxed to speak out and say their mind. And I think like they made a great decision with all the 5 people that they have, like Twitch, Gabby, Bobby, Goldie, Mimi, everybody. Like it was perfect. I think the cast was perfect and their stories were amazing. Like you come off with so much respect for him, you wind up crying, this and that. It's just it's really perfect. I love it. I can't get enough of it.
We talked about wrestlers do more than that. They become idols in a way. There was an episode, I believe episode 4, Thank You CM Punk, that is basically about how CM Punk, just him wrestling, saved the student's life. Is there any, or has there ever been a wrestler who has done that for you?
Well, it's funny. There is a story, and I told this in an interview years ago, but it wasn't like saved my life or anything, but like probably like helped me with my marriage, because me and my wife, we weren't like fighting and arguing, but she was doubting that this whole wrestling thing was going to work out now that I left the phone company and I was just doing wrestling full time with coaching. And it wasn't until like Stone Cold out of nowhere just like texted me, and or I mean he instant messaged me on Twitter, and we started talking, and he's like, how about your number? I'll just call you tomorrow. So I'm like, okay. And I gave him my number, and he texted me. He's like, it's Austin. I'll call you tomorrow. And I told my wife, and she didn't believe me. She's like, yeah, whatever. And then like he called during dinner time, and we just talked wrestling for hours. Like he wanted to know everything. Like he didn't know that I was into wrestling. He wound up messaging me because I wrote an article about Joe Paterno. I used to write political stuff. So it was about Joe Paterno and what went down with the case with Sandusky. And he reached out to me to tell me he enjoyed the article and stuff. And then it became friends talking wrestling. But that was really cool. That was like one of those things where I had 38 followers on Twitter. Here he is reaching out to me and then give me his number and calling me. And then we become friends. And then he's giving me advice and having me on his show to say like, hey, you know, I was up all night watching you and your training, you know, and all this. It's amazing to me. So like that was one of those things where he kind of did something and he didn't even realize it. You know, it made my wife go, oh man, maybe he is doing something right if this guy's noticing him. And then, then my peers start to notice it. And so, yeah, that was really cool. That was one of those moments where I was like, wow, that was awesome. And he didn't have to do that. And I'll owe him for that forever. And to him, it's not a big deal, but it is to me.
I was wondering, we talk about WWE, ROH, all these different networks and programs. I was wondering, with the Monster Factory, basically feeding all of your talent to these companies, is there ever a side of you that kind of wants to work hand in hand with these companies in terms of there's a performance center for WWE, so is Monster Factory for, say, ROH or New Japan or anyone else?
The plan was years ago in 2014 or 15, Kevin Kelly came to me for that very thing, that we were going to be the NXT for Ring of Honor. And then in 2018, they hired me to run their dojo and run it and make it like the performance center. But there were some people there who didn't want that, so they found a way to get me fired. So it's interesting. Yeah. But I would love to, but everything's going to be on my terms. And a lot of people in wrestling don't like that. They want things done their way. But if you're hiring me to be a coach, I'm very successful. So let me coach. So if they let me do my thing and do it my way, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I doubt they will. That's the thing, because that's just the way wrestling is. It's a weird business. It's very backwards. If I owned a business and I saw someone as successful as me, who's an entrepreneur himself and runs a business himself, I would be like Ring of Honor tried to do. They're like, here, we're going to give you this, go run it. And you're going to run it great because you've run your company great for the last X amount of years. Go lift this ship up too. Because a lot of people that are coaches have no experience doing what I do. They just get fed people and they go in there for a couple hours and coach them and then they leave. When I have the encapsulation of all the business side of everything, because I came from not making it in pro wrestling and I've made it in pro wrestling. Like, I wasn't given opportunities, I made opportunities. And that's what a lot of people don't realize in wrestling is all these people that go on to WWE and all this and all that, they got their names by WWE and all that and all this. I got my name by me. I made what I did was real. I got everybody out to all these other places. So why wouldn't somebody want to latch on to me? But again, wrestling is backwards. It's just backwards. And if I was like in Hollywood, I would be somewhere right now, like directing this or doing that and all this. Like, they would just gobble me up. And or if I was a football coach or a basketball coach, because that stuff's real. Pro wrestling, they're just like, now. The only people that know what we're doing is people that have been here when I've proven them wrong for the last decade.
Is there a sense of animosity?
Yes, absolutely. I have a huge chip on my shoulder. And here's why the chip is on my shoulder. When I was sending them people years and years ago, I contacted them and said, hey, I'd love to come up and head coach or get a guest coaching gig and just come by and check it out. And they're like, no, we don't do that. When they do, they didn't think I was good enough to do that. So they brought me in basically as a tourist and told me I could come down and visit. And then when I came down and visit, I had said, hey, I would like this to happen. And, the guy's not there anymore, but he told me that, like, hey, once you do get people signed from your company from this point on, we will give you money. And they still haven't paid me at all for any student I've ever sent there. So that's where the animosity kicks in. And then it's just disrespect, because ever since then, I've also been emailing about, hey, I'd love to come by and guest coach again. They're like, yeah, we'll keep you in mind, waiting for the country to open back up. And then now they don't answer my emails. So, yeah, I got animosity, especially like when I look on the TV and my people are there, but I'm not good enough for you.
Okay. Has it always been, have you tried the other companies? Or is it just so?
Everybody's going to be like that. They're backwards. Like I said, what I do is real. So I'm not respected as much as like the people that go play fight. I know it's weird, but that's what it is. I wasn't there. I can't tell the stories of being at WrestleMania. I can't tell the stories about being on the jet with Vince McMahon. I can't tell the stories about agenting in this match or doing that match. I can only tell the stories about having, coached more people in the last decade than anybody, got more people signed than anybody. I've written and produced more shows than anybody. I've done everything, spent more hours training students than anybody, but that's not good enough because I didn't go to Madison Square Garden and wrestle there in 1989 or something. So again, that's why it's backwards. And there is a chip on my shoulder, but it's not going to make me like, it doesn't fuel me. Like I was doing this no matter what.
Right.
But you know, I was a coach. I've had the same thoughts that I have now about the way coaching should be in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23. And it's never going to change. And you know, it's just my take on it. It's just, it doesn't fuel me. It's just another thing there. I do what I'm doing because I love pro wrestling, not because people are doubting me. It's just doubting me is just another thing where I just go, everybody's not right. You know, some people are stupid. Right. It's okay. You know, it's the whole Ted Lasso thing. You know, be curious, not judgmental. Too many people are judgmental about what I do in wrestling as opposed to just sitting there and being like, why is he doing that? Oh, I see. Oh, wow. He's really, yeah, he's got a point, but they don't do that.
Right. So then what would you want your legacy to be? Have you thought of that?
Yeah, I just want it that I create good people, good humans, kind people. I don't want nice people. I want kind people. Nice people will tell you, oh, you broke down, you're out of gas. Oh, that's so horrible. I can't give you a ride though. A kind person says, you're an idiot. Why did you run out of gas? And I'll be there in a minute to pick you up. That's a kind person. And that's the one I want, that tells you the honest truth, but also has your back. I'll take that over people getting signed any day. When people message me and they're like, my kid overcame anxiety, he did this, he did that because what he saw you guys doing and all that, that's so much better than I got signed and I got to wrestle for the WWE for 6 months or a year. No, I don't like that. I'd rather the bigger picture, you know.
Right.
It's not all about pro wrestling.
Right. During the pandemic, you still kept the Monster Factory open. Very difficult. You almost lost your house in the process. Yes. But I wanted to know, during those moments, what was kind of the best lessons that you learned, not only just within the business, but also within yourself?
I learned that I was stronger than I thought I was, because I had never, like, I've been on my own. And when I say on my own, I don't mean on my own, but like I've been out of my house at age 18 pretty much, and on my own doing things, and 19 and 20 trying to find apartments and doing this and doing that and always working. And but like, so like during the pandemic, I saw these people panicking, like, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I'm like, I wasn't doing it before. Like I didn't have the means to go do this. Like I was like, all right, I'm stuck here. So like, let me use this as an opportunity to grow as a person. So I started reading more and doing therapy and different things like that. And then I'm like, all right, well, now that we can't open the Monster Factory, let me sell one of my rings and build a studio so we can learn other aspects of the business and do different things. And instead, I could have easily just closed the Monster Factory. No one would have thought anything. They would have said, all right, you know, bring it back when you're all set. But I couldn't do that. And then I also told the students that owed tuition, don't worry about paying tuition. Don't worry about it. We'll get through this. And it was kind of an example to the students, like, it's not all about the money here. It's more about, are you okay as a person? Are you going to be okay? So that was like what I went through. Like, and then when I came back, I realized like all these kids are not only under my care for what they do in the ring, but now it's also health wise. So now I got to worry about masks and this and, you know, fumigation and doing this and treating that. But that's the way it's always been. It's just that just put a focus on it. You know what I mean? It wasn't always about pro wrestling and protecting them there. It was protecting them, their mental health, their everything. So like, I think the pandemic just put like a microscope over top of that aspect of like, hey, there's more to this wrestling training than just worrying about the wrestling stuff. And it was mental health stuff. And it was like, are you okay? And do you feel comfortable coming here? And are you vaccinated? Did you get tested? You know, are you masking up all the time? And it was communication and trust. And then like when we came out, it was just refreshing just to see everybody's face again and just being at ease and like, you know, kind of getting on board. And then other people were just like, I lost like 2 years of my life, or, you know, I feel like I lost everything. And just that communication and the school still being there and us still talking on Facebook and being around, as opposed to shutting the doors down and going away for a year and a half and cutting on and going away for a year and a half and cutting off communications like most businesses would have done, and we just didn't do that. And I think that's why we came out stronger and better for
Who do you lean on for support? You're a support for others. Who's that support for you?
it. That's a good question. Missy's great. My other coach, Missy Sampson.
Mhm.
Um, I'm very emotional, and I tend to cry a lot. So I tend to lean on women because
Mhm.
women are not afraid to show their emotion because they're
Right.
stronger than men. They are. So like it's usually like Gabby or maybe Mimi or uh, my wife, of course. But it's stuff like that, and then just other times like my therapy is just tweeting or doing some social media or writing or things like that. Plus, I do a lot of meditation and a lot of that can help. Like meditation is so good, and you can focus so much stuff and breathing techniques to help you with anxiety and stuff like that. Like I have social anxiety. You might not be able to tell it, but I dread these interviews. Once I
Wow.
start them, I am fine, but I dread them all day. Like I have another one after this or another one,
Right.
terrified terrified, but I have to get through it for my business and for my kids. If it was just my business, meaning if I was selling like, sneakers or something, I wouldn't be doing this interview because I, I, I don't care. But because of my students, I'm doing this because I worry about them. This interview helps them. If it was just about me, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd be sitting in my room. Like if I had all the money in the world, I'd probably just be sitting in my room and coaching and not worrying about anything else and never doing interviews or anything. But like this stuff I have to do to help the business and my students. And plus it helps me get better. It helps me get through my anxiety, which in turn helps them.
Right.
It's a
And
weird
last,
cycle.
yeah,
It's a weird cycle.
I understand. I understand completely. The last way I want to touch upon, we know that everything is scripted. The outcome is scripted, but this is still real in terms of you can still get injured. We've seen it many times before. You talked about herniated discs, the L5, the L4, sciatica, bone chips in both elbows. I wanted to know about with the physical, but also the mental. How do we want to be a wrestler? We approach this, we're not prepared for the constant travel, the constant stress of what that can bring. How do you kind of teach them about balancing and finding mental happiness?
Yeah, what I do is I show them what pro wrestling is like, meaning I make them show up with their training shirt. They have to show up in what they're supposed to be wearing. They have to show up prepared. They have to show up on time. They have to communicate. Like all those things are a lot of things other schools don't do because it's very difficult to do. Plus, that aspect really messes with my mental health because imagine then I'm running this school where I'm worried about 40 students showing up and 20 of them are texting me that they're not coming in and really not giving me a valid reason. But then they want me to be responsible for helping them achieve their dreams when they're not doing everything they're supposed to be doing. So I know when they fail, it'll be my fault, not theirs. You know what I mean? So like that's the kind of thing I'm trying to show these kids of like, there's more that goes into this than that. You have to be held accountable. You have to do this. You have to do that. Um, there's a million other aspects that go into the training part and the injury part and all that stuff that like I don't know how to say it, but like I think like it's basically you're learning the wrestling business at the Monster Factory, but you're working with a net. Like I'm giving you all those risks that you have to take, meaning like put yourself out there, this, and this, but you're not going to get fired. You're not going to lose this. You're not going to do this. Like I'm putting you out there to fail because you need to fail to get better. You need to experience. Like they'll always ask me, what should I do in this match? That's up to you. I taught you how to paint. Go paint the house, and I'll tell you what you missed. You know what I mean? I'm not there to supervise you anymore. I taught you to paint. So go paint. So that's where a lot of other schools they like to micromanage and do stuff like that because they want to seem important that they have all the answers. when the idea of a coach is not to give you all the answers, it's to give you the tools to find the answers. That's what a lot of people miss in pro wrestling. They want to tell you everything they used that got them over and this and that, when no, it's up to you to let the kid find out what works for them and gets that kid over, not what worked for you.
Right. Thank you. So also really quickly, WWE merged with Endeavor, which is also run by UFC. As a coach, do you look at that product differently and how you approach it with your students now that UFC could be involved?
Again, I'm not judgmental. I'm curious.
Right.
I want to see what happens. I have no, like, somebody texted me their take on it last night and I had not thought of it. And I went, oh, that completely changed everything. Because I thought I thought one way and went, oh, maybe I should just wait. Because I don't know. I have no idea. And, you know, I hope it means something good. I hope it doesn't mean one thing's going away. I hope they don't try to blur the lines with real and not real. Like, just stop. Like, I don't know. I'm anxious, like, meaning like I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm going to tune in tonight and see, is anything going to change, or is it going to be same old, same old? And plus, whenever there's any kind of acquisition and all, I tense up because I don't want to see my friends lose their jobs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what happens a lot. And I don't want to see that happen. That's the only thing I take away from it, is I hope my friends don't lose their jobs. You know?
Thank you so much for speaking to me. Wonderful conversation. I
You
learned so
rock.
much about everything. So thank you.
Awesome Spider-Man hat, by the way.
Thank you.